Ladies and gentlemen, something very important is happening next week. Actually, there are many important things that are happening in the very close future, and there's also a little bit of speculation right now about some very important things not happening right now. Anyway, guys, if you've not done it yet, make sure you press that like button and let's dive right in. So first of all, one of the most important things that is happening this Wednesday is listed right here. It is the inflation numbers that are going to be shared over in the United States. And as we all know, Powell has made this pretty controversial. They've been talking a lot about how the interest rate is going to change and, well, their policy in that regard. We covered it only a couple of days ago with the minutes. And the thing is, as we all know, the interest rate is something they change for the most part to influence the inflation. And their expectation right now, again, is that the inflation rate is actually going down even further. And that potentially could mean that their policy is working the right way because a healthy inflation would be around 2%. And this means we're actually coming down pretty significantly again. Anyway, that's something that is happening that could have some detrimental consequences to crypto. Actually, I shouldn't say detrimental. I should say just shock the market pretty significantly. Very often, whenever these numbers come out, guys, and I'm preparing you right now, we see a pretty juicy dump and pump, mostly like that, but sometimes it's a pump and dump. Usually it moves at least 1 to 2%, and you might be thinking that's not much, but very often we are leverage trading, and that could be the difference between 100% gains, 200% gains, or losing your entire trade. So it's a very significant deal because it all happens very fast. Having said that, something that's not happening, obviously, is the settlement, or is it? Here's an article that I thought was pretty interesting. XRP lawsuit. Pro-Ripple lawyer and community voices concern over summary judgment. And I have two things to say about that. One is a lot of people are commenting out just how long everything has taken. And it is true. XRP Crypto Wolf says anyone else getting tired of the judge taking like forever to rule in favor of Ripple? Because indeed, it's taken a long ass time. And Bill Morgan said, we're all past well tired of waiting for it. Think how clients who are parties feel waiting sometimes over 1 year for a judgment, which my clients have experienced many times. I guess XRP holders are in effect parties given the impact of the case on XRP. But at the end of the day, yeah, I've started to really get into a different type of mindset where every single day I expect there's not going to be a settlement, but I'm hoping there is. And I think a lot of you guys have had to adopt that too because man, the amount of insiders, the amount of people with knowledge that have said that a summary judgment was coming, or the amount of times that Brad Garlinghouse said, no, it's going to happen in the next couple weeks or this, that, and it turns out to be a big fad. It's kind of getting on my nerves a little bit. A lot of you guys are saying, Dusty, you keep saying it's about to be this or that date. All I'm doing is basically regurgitating these lawyers or executives at Ripple or, some of these people that are speaking out. I don't have any opinion on when it's going to be because it's based upon nothing. I literally don't have insights except for knowledge about the lawsuit, but no inside knowledge. So I can't tell you. So I'm also tired as you are. And every single time I cover that it's going to end in a couple days or so, that's as far as I can know. That's as far as we can get. Anyway, there was something interesting. I think this is pretty peculiar. John Dean stated this. This issue, which is referring to Mark Fagel, who had a longer debacle here, but we're going to cover that in a sec, is a major reason I got involved as amicus in Ripple and Library. Mark is a reasonable guy with great experience leading a regional office for the SEC in enforcement and was a defense lawyer fighting the SEC. The SEC claimed XRP holders and library coin holders need not worry because of the argument that Section 4 exemptions apply to token holders. But Section 4 exemptions apply only to securities, and once something is deemed a security, the burden shifts to prove an exemption applies. I described that as unconstitutional burden shifting. Again, to give you guys the idea, they're basically saying, hey, don't worry about it because we're getting you, or you have your right to have an exemption. But basically you can't prove it, but they're saying you can have it. Then again, the moment that the SEC has authority to give you that exemption, basically, well, at that point you are a security because only securities have that. And at that point, it's up to you to prove that you deserve the exemption, which is basically a little shriggle bob. I don't know how to call it. I described that as unconstitutional burden shifting when applied to secondary sales. That's why I argued to Judge Torres in my amicus brief that the SEC's argument that XRP holders lack standing to be heard is without merit. It's also why I hope the judge in library does what he promised to do when he renders his next opinion and order. So what we're referring to here is, let's quickly take a look back. Steven said, the SEC finally advanced their legal theory of secondary market sales in its response to Coinbase's Rule 12c motion, their motion to dismiss. In their reply, they invoke some recent cases like the library and a couple of others. What are your thoughts, lawyers? Mark Fayol came in to say, well, I personally believe this is absolutely correct in terms of policy and the intent of the securities laws. Whether it's supported by precedent is another story. I think it's a novel issue that can go either way, and disagree with those who argue the SEC is overreaching here. And Jeremy says, well, Mark, if the sales scheme somehow makes the token a security in perpetuity, would you then agree from a logical standpoint that if the sales scheme does not make the token a security, it also not a security in perpetuity? And the latter situation makes no sense. Mark says, yeah, I'm assuming the original offering involved a security, which isn't to say a commodity can't later be securitized, but that's an even more complicated situation we're not facing here. And I'm not saying it's necessarily a security in perpetuity. I appreciate that a token's utility may take it out of the ambit of securities regulation at some point. For me, the question is, if the initial offering involved a security, is the burden on the SEC to prove each successive sale also involves a security? Or is the seller exchange to prove the token has morphed into something else due to utility or whatever? Here's where I think the law is unsettled, and I think both sides have an argument. To which John had to state that this is basically burden shifting. Anyway, I could sit here talking about it for hours. We know the SEC is not fair. What was interesting is Circle and Tether apparently froze $65 million in assets transferred from Multi-Chain. Multi-Chain has suspended its operations after an unexplained transfer of crypto assets worth millions took place a couple days ago. And that's only one thing I want to say here. Man, the hacks are pretty significant and they're pretty much out there, but it seems to be that the prevention or the solving the situation, I guess the actual loss prevention seems to have really stepped up their game, with Circle and Tether coming in hot to free so much money. Otherwise, all these people would have lost it. Sometimes I really think back to the whole question, and this is a really important one, of really, can we as a human species fully trust decentralized currencies, decentralized technologies? At the end of the day, I think people are too unreliable in general. What I mean with that is, let's say that every single person had to work to make something work, right? They had to come together to make something. No, nothing could ever get done, because we all know that there's always going to be one person who would not, right? There's no unison in this world. It does not exist. What can is for the majority to come together to something. I agree with that. And in crypto, well, for a lot of people to come together to achieve something in comparison to the government, that's fine. I think so too. But if you really think about it, let's say that we only self-custody and we only have irreversible blockchains, basically, which, I mean, by near definition, it's irreversible. I just mean that they can't stop the money anymore, like with Bitcoin. I sometimes think, well, you really need stablecoins and things of that nature because people are just too stupid, and hackers are going to be there to steal people's money. There are going to be too many issues where eventually your whole system just collapses. And with things like our stablecoins right here, let's say the damage is 100 million, of which 70% of that was a stablecoin. At least, out of that 70%, at least half of it will be able to be blocked again. If you know what I mean? Like, sometimes this centralization can actually have good parts, which is something I never thought I'd say, because I'm a big fan of keeping everything decentralized. And I do believe that there could also always be, in a decentralized manner, a vote to have these things blocked to a certain degree. Then again, whenever you have a vote to be able to block things, still things get to a difficult situation. But I guess that's actually a still decentralized way in which things can be done, to vote for those matters, as long as no one central party can decide. I just meant to throw up a little ball of just how crazy things are in the quote-unquote hacks, and how interesting it sometimes is that people have to self-custody. And that's why Ledger went for their recovery product as well, if you guys remember, because they also know not everybody can handle all this responsibility. And it's something interesting because I'm a really big fan of keeping your own responsibility and handling everything yourself. But the masses, can they really? But that's just some flutter, some thoughts. All right. So when I was talking about the SEC just now, things were, they always get so spicy. And sometimes I have to kind of calm myself down. So one thing that people have been sharing today was this. In 2020, Goldman Sachs is heavily invested in the upcoming Ant Financial IPO, which would have been the biggest IPO of all time. Simpson Thacher, if you don't know that name, then I don't know what to tell you, was Ant's legal team. The Chinese government blocked the IPO in November of 2020. Bill Hinman convinces Clayton to sue Ripple 1 month later. Guess who else was planning to go public around early 2021? Well, Ripple. And again, Ant Financial had tried to buy MoneyGram, but they were blocked by the U.S. government. U.S. blocked MoneyGram's sale to China's Ant Financial and blah, blah, blah. Ripple ended up partnering with MoneyGram and buying a significant number of shares of MoneyGram with future options to buy more. The SEC lawsuit ended up being the reason the partnership had to dissolve. I guess Simpson Thacher was still pissed that Ant was blocked from buying it. Everywhere you look, there's Simpson Thacher, which again is where Hinman was at. Either they were trying to stall for Ant, Alipay, to eventually IPO before Ripple, or they were just pissed off and wanted to punish Ripple for the MGI acquisition. I'm not sure, but these guys have messed us over for sure. I can't conclude that that's officially the truth from the perspective of what their motives were. What we can tell for sure is indeed the points he's making. They are true by just looking at them. But people have also pointed this out, right? Because the whole Clayton situation is so strange. Why did they sue Ripple? Why? It from almost any perspectives seems to be it was just out of the blue. He just decided to wake up one day and sue him. Because even now, if you look at Twitter, Eleanor Tourette posted former SEC Chairman Jay Clayton and former CFTC Chairman Tim Massad on a path forward for crypto regulation. They basically said that they shouldn't be going for these enforcement actions anymore. They're unlikely to bring about significant improvement in investor protections and market integrity quickly. Yet, Clayton was the SEC chairman for 4 years. He could have developed a tailored disclosure regime for crypto and DeFi, but he didn't. And that's, again, the crazy thing, right? He's now stating that the way the SEC is doing it is wrong. It's not going to go anywhere. But he was the head of the SEC for 4 years. At all time, or at least 3 of those years, they've been properly investigating into crypto. They had all the time to get things done, but they didn't. So to now, a couple years later, come back and say, well, the way we do it is not the best. What? I mean, didn't you know that a long time ago? I mean, you had all the knowledge, you had all the insights. Not that much has changed, really, except for just more lawsuits. But I believe they knew this all along. But yeah, like I said, I can sit here talking about this for hours, and I sometimes do, as you guys probably know. But it's just so crazy to me. And all this stuff is crazy. I keep calling it crazy because so much is. But yeah, important week, I guess, tomorrow, starting tomorrow. So stick around for that. It's going to be about 72 hours or so since, or when we're going to get, I think maybe a little bit more, maybe about 100 hours